Hi everyone, welcome to the Movieception Show. My name is Fariba, and today we're about to watch the first trailer for Rebel Moon. If you don't know too much about this film, this is actually Netflix's upcoming sci-fi thriller. It's honestly, at least kind of, based upon my, discussion with some people and just me getting all the updates in the movie sphere, it's like one of the most anticipated sci-fi films of this year, especially coming from Netflix. We've been hearing so much about it, or at least I've been hearing so much about it. Of course, for one thing, it's a movie directed by Zack Synder, and I mean, he's a very well-known director. He has quite a very, big fandom when it comes to his work. Like, I mean, he's done The Watchmen. Of course, the DCU movies like Man of Steel and Justice League, and of course, the whole phenomenon that was the release to Cinder Cut version of Justice League. I mean, he's become quite a well-renowned director in the last few years, of course. And now here it is, right? Now he has his upcoming sci-fi film called Rebel Moon. Now, if you don't know too much about what this movie is about or just the premise, let's just say it's the best way to really describe it, or at least how they've been describing it, is that it's supposed to be a far more mature version of Star Wars, which, I mean, having seen some of the first images that came out about like a month or so ago, you definitely get the sci-fi vibes out of it, kind of the, epic opera of like their journey and all that sort of stuff. Seeing a lot of the Star Wars influences, like the villains and like the hero and the hero's journey. It does seem as if there's a lot of inspiration from Star Wars that has really kind of, basically kind of created this whole film that we're about to see. I mean, it's been, I guess you can say, it's been described to kind of become like a new era for Star Wars or something like that. I mean, I don't know too much about it to the extent that I've been following very closely, but I do know the basic ideas that, it is supposed to be one of the most highly anticipated movies of this year. So, I mean, I'm very curious to follow up on this story, to follow up on this movie, what it's going to be about, kind of, analyze just the hype behind it, because there's just been some talk about it, yet the question's obviously going to be how is the quality of the movie, and whether or not it can be a very good, substitute for like, Star Wars of this generation, right? So it's going to be worth seeing just the first trailer itself, like how it really kind of impresses me. Of course, like, it was recently announced that this movie is going to be a two-parter. So they just released the subtitles for them. The first one, I believe, is called The Child of Fire. And the second one is called The Scar Giver. So the first one's going to be releasing later this year in December. And then in 5 months' time, or at least 5 months later, in April, part 2 is going to come out. So they're actually kind of releasing like not too far from each other. So it'll be very interesting to see how this movie goes. I mean, I'm very intrigued to kind of figure out what this story is going to be about, what its approach is going to be, of course. And I think, I'm very curious to see where the story goes and if this actually lives up to the hype. So yeah, without further ado, let's get right down into the first trailer for Rebel Moon. Okay, we got like a Sauron looking figure.
Of Princess Issa? In myth, she was called the Redeemer. It was said this child would stop the madness of war.
Oh, so chosen one, basically.
That she was to usher in a new age of peace and compassion. I was given memories of a world I will never see. Loyalty to a king I cannot serve. And love for a child I could not save.
What do you think they want?
Everything.
I found her. Scar Giver.
Sorry. Okay, that makes a lot more sense now.
I was taught that love is weakness. There is a difference between justice and revenge.
There is a price to pay for your defiance.
One moment.
I do love this part.
Okay.
Hold on.
I don't want no trouble.
We're not here to bring any.
Are you ready?
You and I both know fear. Let's show them that we're not afraid. Let's show them we are more than the shackles that bind us.
Okay. Pretty cool.
A king is a man, and a man can fail. But a myth is indestructible.
The time has come for all that you love. Protect each other and show them no mercy.
Okay.
Who among you is
Okay,
willing
this
to
reminds me
die
of Justice League.
for what you believe?
There you go. That was the first trailer for Rebel Moon, and I think it's really, there's a lot really just to take in with this trailer, because there's a lot of things to kind of break down. Like, watching this film, or watching this trailer, of course, like, it definitely gives off like the vibes of like a Star Wars movie. Like, it does seem like it has that epic odyssey. So there's no denying that. Like, you can see some of the space elements here and there where you know, how they're having these blasters and all that sort of stuff. So you can definitely see the Star Wars influence in this movie. But I also want to say, it kind of feels like this is more of like a child of not just, it's basically like a child of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, because I feel like I was able to kind of pinpoint a lot of Lord of the Rings influence in this movie, or at least just having seen the first trailer. Like, there was like that one Sauron looking figure, or some of the creatures throughout some of the throughout some of the, you know, areas that they kind of pinpoint. So yeah, I mean, that's something that really kind of hit me right away, that it's like Star Wars but with, you know, a little bit of Lord of the Rings vibes to it. I mean, for one thing, of course, it does seem like, in terms of just the kind of like the whole idea, my whole impression, like, I feel like this is definitely like a very promising, you know, film. Because now I'm not the biggest Zack Synder fan as like a lot of other people are. I feel like I'm kind of like, it could be a hit or miss with me when it comes to his projects. Like, of course, like, I mean, when it comes to Justice League, like, I feel like the Synder cut was far better than the original cut that Warner Bros. Had put out. But there are also definitely like other films I feel like, you know, it could have been better, right? I mean, of course, the recent one would be like Army of Darkness. That was definitely one where I was just like, it was just an okay film, but I felt like a lot of the visual effects were kind of off-putting because it just felt so video game-like, or like the fact that some of the background just felt so oversaturated. And I mean, this one, I feel like this, like, but in the case of this one, right? Like, I felt like everything was like far more balanced in terms of the visuals, the action, the sci-fi elements. In terms of the visuals itself, of course, like, I feel like it does seem far more blended well. Seems far more as if like the actual VFX efforts were much better, well put. Because I feel like it wasn't as overly saturated as a lot of his films typically, you know, appear to be. And I feel like this one was just like, it doesn't try to be too artistic, but it does enough to kind of make itself its own film, but also like bringing in a lot of the influence and all this sort of stuff. So I think the overall with this trailer, it definitely feels like a far improvement for everything else I've seen with Zack Synder's work. And I think that this is definitely an interesting one to keep an eye on. I like how they really do get into right down into the idea of who this Redeemer is, who happens to be played by Sofia Boutella. I mean, it's really interesting to see her, because usually when we see her in these movies, she's like, I don't know if you are familiar with Sofia Boutella's, you know, her filmography, her resume when it comes to like the movie and TV sphere. I don't know if she's ever done TV, but definitely the movie sphere. Like, she's been in The Mummy, she's been in Star Trek Beyond, and a lot of times she's actually in far more like very, heavy costume and a lot of makeup, because it's not usually her face, but she's using she's usually like a different sort of, like, I guess they try to dress her up as like a different species or something like that, or a different look. So she's usually like not in her usual self, because she is like playing something else in like a galaxy or something like that. And now here it is, we're actually seeing Sophia Boutella. So it'll be interesting to see how she can lead the film, because I don't think in a general sense she has really led her own film before. Again, she's played like the antagonist in The Mummy, the fact that she again was like a supporting character in Star Trek Beyond. She was also one of the secondary antagonists in the Kingsman film, the first one. But I've never really seen her as like the star center, like the leading character. So that's going to be something, for one, that I think it's going to be worth keeping an eye on. I think she's someone who is very talented, of course. Like, I think when it comes to things like action, she is very good at that. Like, I think she's really, established herself as someone who can be a very established action actor, I guess you can say. I wouldn't say action like lead, because again, the question will be is whether or not she can be an action star or an action hero in that sense. So that's going to be the one thing going into it. Again, she is capable of doing action alone. She has done it. She has the resume for it. So there's no denying that, for her to be involved in this movie like, Rebel Moon, where it is so heavy on the sci-fi, so heavy on the action, that I feel like this is a really good fit for her. I mean, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense why she's involved in this movie. But I think it's going to be a question of, can she lead it? And I think, honestly, I have a lot of hopes that she can, because I think, again, she has such a very rich, filmography that proves that, she has the experience for it. So I think in that case, like, hopefully, like, when the movie does come out in December, that we really get to see her shine in the role as a Redeemer or a Stargiver, whichever, how they're trying to describe her, because they gave her, like, so many different names. But we'll see how that all goes. I think that, again, she seems very promising in the role that she has in this movie. And again, I'm going to keep my hopes up that, at least with Zack Synder, that he really does a good job, or at least, gives us a very satisfying story with Rebel Moon, and doing so in a way that really kind of captures Sophia Boutella's character in the limelight. So again, lots of things to kind of like consider that, of course. Again, like, I feel like watching this movie, there's just so many influences that you can really pinpoint, like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. I feel like there was a little bit of Gladiator, which, I mean, that's something I felt like I was getting a little hint of. Of course, there's one aspect that I'm just like very curious about, because they do kind of go into Stargiver's like origins a little bit. Like the fact that, she happens to, it appears as though she used to be an academy of some sort. But then something tragic happened, and that led to what was likely her lover's death. So definitely getting a hint of romance as well. Like, it's really interesting to see that we're seeing sci-fi elements, but we're also seeing some other things like the romance and all that sort of stuff. Again, giving us the hint that this is a sci-fi epic. So this is something, again, I'm really looking forward to seeing when it comes to the movie and when it releases in December. And again, how they're going to break apart the movie, considering that this is going to be a 2-part film. It's not going to be just one, but 2-part film. And not just that, but if, it becomes big enough and the story itself is interesting, that, it warrants itself to kind of expand itself into becoming a franchise. I think that's, again, considering the fact that it's being described as, a mature version of Star Wars, like, I would imagine that, Zack Synder and Netflix will try to do everything they can to try and make this movie a worthwhile experience, a big enough film that, it could warrant itself a franchise, right? Of course, I mean, I'm not going to go too deep into like the whole situation with, this whole streaming situation, and as well as the fact that we are having this strike that's going on that particularly goes into the issues of things like, residuals and all that sort of stuff. And right now we're definitely in a very deep conundrum regarding the whole situation with box office and movies not performing so well, are underwhelming in ways that it shouldn't be. But yeah, I think that we'll see where this all goes, right? Like, if this is film that, it's worth the risk for Netflix, it's worth, putting so much of their faith into Zack Synder to really execute a big story. Because again, this seems like it's a very, very big story to tackle without a doubt. Like, again, it definitely gives off the Star Wars vibe, definitely gives off the Lord of the Rings vibe. I think, again, having seen the trailer, you can definitely tell it's going to be an epic of some sort, and therefore there's going to be some very intriguing storytelling to come out of this film, because, again, there's just a lot of things it's going to be really tackling in ways that, you know, it would be something that we probably never would imagine. But yeah, I mean, I think, again, I will keep my, you know, mind open to watch this film. I think, again, the first trailer seems really promising, without a doubt. I mean, I have to see it again and just watch a couple other things to kind of figure out some, you know, probably some elements I may have just missed just the first time. But yeah, no, I mean, I look forward to seeing this film, of course, when it comes in December. I hope maybe Netflix is going to consider putting it in theaters, because I feel like when it comes to the theoretical experience, that there's just a different feel to it than just watching it at home and streaming it at home. I feel like for something as big as, you know, Rebel Moon, I feel like it's one of those cases where I would, you know, push Netflix to go and, you know, show it up in theaters, rather than just keeping exclusive for streaming. But we'll see how it all goes, right? We'll see if anything ever changes, or if Netflix has so much hope in this movie that, you know, they will pursue a theoretical release. I mean, again, highly doubtful, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah, I think that is all I have to say about Rebel Moon. I mean, again, the trailer looks really promising. I think there's a lot of potential for it. The cast looks pretty good so far. The actual visuals look like there are much, you know, like at least an improvement from everything else I've seen with Zack Synder's work. Like, I feel like this is one that's really well balanced so far, and this is only just the first trailer, right? So this is what they just completed, and yet it looks like it's really kind of coming together very well. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are about this trailer. Are you looking forward to seeing Rebel Moon when it comes out in December, as well as in April next year? What are your thoughts about the fact that this is supposed to be described as a mature version of Star Wars? I think I definitely get the hint of that. I do see where they're getting a far more mature, you know, ideas, a far more, you know, mature approach to the story that really elevates itself from Star Wars. What are some things that you anticipate this film, you know, this movie to do? Do you think that, you know, the film will be very successful to a point where we do see a franchise ignite? And do you think for a fact that Netflix will maybe actually pursue a theoretical release? Like, would you prefer to see this movie in theaters, or do you think it's better that it is coming in streaming? Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe.